Welcome to the second day of the subjects we are covering on the Bhagavad Gita. So the Bhagavad Gita covers largely five topics. It covers the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, that is God. It discusses the nature of the individual soul. It describes Prakriti or nature. It discusses our entanglement with nature, which is called karma. And it discusses how we become free from our entanglement with karma, which is the means by which we reunite with God, which is yuja or yogas. So today we will do what the Bhagavad Gita says about God. Now, Bhagavad Gita is very clear. The title itself should tell you that it is Bhagavad Gita. And by Bhagavad Gita, we mean that it is the song of God. This is the literal translation of Bhagavad Gita, that the Bhagavad Gita is the song of God. So the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita is God himself. If you cannot accept that the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita is God himself, then your interest in the Bhagavad Gita should be directed elsewhere. Because either you accept, at least theoretically, that the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita is God, or you look for some other scripture. Because Bhagavad Gita is very clearly about the speaker being God. Krishna himself declares that he is God in the Bhagavad Gita, and Arjuna also declares that he is God. And then he gives a string of authorities who also have affirmed that the speaker, Krishna, is God. So when we say that Krishna is God, we should understand something about the different aspects of the different forms in which God appears within this world. The Lord is said to be omnipotent. Omnipotent means God is all powerful. And because God is all powerful, there is nothing that God is incapable of doing. And what do we mean by there is nothing that God is incapable of doing? That means God can exist in a form, he can exist without form, he can exist within the world, he can exist outside the world. There is nothing that God is incapable of doing. God controls everything in this universe. In the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, it has been described that Tena Vinash Tranamapi na Chalati, that not a blade of grass moves without God's consent. If a blade of grass moves to the left side, that is by God's consent. If a blade of grass moves on the right side, that is also by God's consent. So nothing in this universe moves without the consent of the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Mayadhyakshena prakriti suyate sa characharam hetunanena kaunteya jagad viparivartate. And he controls everything through prakriti. He controls everything through material nature. And all living, non-living, moving, non-moving creatures, all creation, maintenance, destruction is all controlled by God. It is Krishna. God is also all-knowing, which is God is omniscient. And by meaning that God is omniscient, it means he knows everything. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I know everything. I know the past, I know the present, I know the future of all living beings. And of course he says, but me, nobody knows. Vedaham samatitani vartmani cha Arjuna, bhutani cha bhavishyani mam tu vedna kaschana. I know everything. I know the past, I know the present, I know the future of all living entities. But me, he says, nobody knows. So God is omnipotent. He is omniscient, which means he knows everything. He is also, shall we say, omnipresent. God is present everywhere. And because God is present everywhere, it is for us to understand that God lies in everything. It is described that Andantrastha Parmanu Chayantrastham, that God is situated in the heart of every atom. To understand God in his different aspects, I must give you a verse from the Bhagavad Puran. I gave this verse yesterday, but I'm saying it again today. That God is understood in three ascending levels of realization. And this ascending levels of realization are understanding God as Brahman, understanding God as Paramatma, and understanding God as Bhagavan. The realization of Brahman is the realization that we get through Jnana, that we get through spiritual knowledge, we get the understanding that everything is Brahman. Sarva Khalva Idam Brahma. Indeed, we also come to realize that we are also a particle of that Brahman. Aham Brahmasmi. So, this Brahman realization, which is the realization of the Jnani, is like the realization of the sunshine. If you wake up in your bedroom when the sun has entered your room, you will say, yes, the sun has entered my room. But how has the sun entered your room? It is not the sun that has entered your room, it is the sunshine that has entered your room. And the sunshine that has entered your room is pervading your room. So Brahman is that energy of God which is all pervading. So that is the Jnani realization of God. Then one whose mind has become purified by work and whose mind has become further purified by knowledge, now sits in meditation, and in meditation he realizes that Lord is seated within his heart. That realization of God is known as Paramatma. And that realization of God as a Paramatma is like you are seeing the reflection of the sun in a mirror, probably your dressing table, which is facing the window. So in one perspective, you see the sunshine pervading the room as Brahman. You also see the reflection of the sun in your mirror, which is like looking at the Lord within your heart. And this is known as Paramatma. The next level of realization, this realization of Paramatma is the realization of one who is the Dhyan Yogi, who meditates upon the Lord in the heart, and in his meditation he sees that Lord who is seated within his heart. The next level of realization is the realization of Brahman. And that realization, is the realization of Bhagavan. So sunshine is like the Brahman. The image in your heart, just like the image in your mirror, is like the realization of Paramatma. And when you look out of your window and you see the sun in the sky in all its glory, that realization is the realization of Bhagavan. So Bhagavan is the source of the Paramatma and Bhagavan is the source of the Brahman. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Brahmano hi pratishtaham. amritasya avyayasya cha shashvatasya dharmasya sukhasya aikantikasya cha. Krishna says that I am not Brahman, I am the source of Brahman, I am the rest of Brahman, I am the foundation of Brahman. It is from me that Brahman emanates. When Krishna is addressed by Arjuna, Arjuna does not address Krishna as Brahman. Krishna is addressed by Arjuna as Para Brahman. That is one who is beyond Brahman. So you have to be very clear in understanding that when we say Krishna is God, Krishna is beyond Brahman. He is the Pratishta of Brahman. He is the source, he is the rest, he is the foundation of Brahman. He is also Paramatma. And that Paramatma which is seated in your heart is none other than Lord Krishna himself. And yet, Krishna is there as Bhagavan, as the source of all of these. Now, this source of all of these, which is Bhagavan, is inconceivable. He is achintya. He is avyakta. He is achintya, meaning he is inconceivable. Avyakta means he is beyond the perception of your eyes, ears, nose, smell, sense of touch. He is beyond your senses. But while he is both inconceivable and beyond your senses, from time to time, that Lord descends on this earth. And that descent of God, or rather that descent of Bhagavan, which is the original source of all the other manifestations of God, that descent of Bhagavan into the world is known as Avatar. There are many varieties of avatars. For example, Lord Ram is Maryada Purushottam. He is an incarnation of God, Ram, but while he is an incarnation of God or Bhagavan, Bhagavan Ram is restricted in his appearance to behave like an ideal king. And since he is restricted to behave like the ideal king, he is known as Maryada Purushottam. But when we talk about Krishna or Krishna Avatara, Krishna Avatara is a manifestation of God in Leela Avatara. There are no restrictions in his behavior. There are no restrictions in his activities. There are no restrictions in his powers. And there is no restriction in how he demonstrates them within this world. Therefore, he is known as Purna Avatar. He comes into this world as an avatar. He descends into this world as an avatar. But when he descends into this world as avatar, he is fully empowered to demonstrate all his abilities as God. Although he appears in this world as God, he simultaneously pervades the universe. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagad avyakta murtina matsthani sarva bhutani na chaham tesu avastitah na cha matsthani sarva bhutani pashyami yogam aishwaryam bhuta brinna cha bhutasto mamatma bhuta bhavanah. So Krishna explains to Arjun that by me, in my all-pervading form, I pervade the entire creation. But yet, he says, although I am pervading creation, I am sitting here, I am standing here in front of you. This is my mystic opulence. To give you an example which is demonstrated in Krishna's childhood pastimes, Krishna is a small child and he's playing in the mud. And when he's playing in the mud, his brother Balaram goes and complains to Yashoda Mai that Krishna is eating mud. So Yashoda gets very upset and picks up Krishna and she shouts at him that why are you eating mud? And although there's mud smeared all over Krishna's baby face, he smiles at her with mud-stained teeth. And he says, I am not eating mud. He's telling lies. I am not eating mud at all. So his mother tells him, open your mouth. Let me see whether you're eating mud. And so Krishna on the lap of Yashoda opens his mouth to show his mother what is inside his mouth. And when Yashoda looks inside his mouth, she sees the entire universe. And when she looks inside the entire universe, in that universe, she sees herself looking into Krishna's mouth. That's what Krishna says. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagada vyaktamurtina matsthani sarva bhutani न चाहम ते सवस्थितम न च मत्स्थानि सर्वभूतानि पश्यमय योगम ऐश्वर्यम भूत बृन्न च भूतस्थो ममात्मा भूत भावनः. That yes, I am pervading the universe and yet magically I am appearing here in front of you. So this is the mystic opulence of Krishna, that he pervades the universe and simultaneously appears before us in an apparently human form. This is the nature of Krishna avatar. Now Krishna says that he appears on this earth for several purposes. And what are the reasons why Krishna appears on this earth? These are described by him in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारता अभ्युत्थानाम अधर्मस्य तदात्मनां सृजामि अहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे. So he explains that I come onto this earth whenever there is a decline in dharma, whenever there is a decline in religion, and whenever there is a rise in irreligion, at such times do I appear on this earth. I come to re-establish the principles of religion, to remove the confusion about irreligion. And I also come to deliver the saintly persons and destroy the evil ones. Somebody is asking some questions. Dharma is a very complex subject. I may use the word religion, but it is far more complex than religion itself. To give you a very simple example, it is the dharma of camphor to burn. And when camphor burns, there is nothing left except the scent of camphor. So also each of us has a dharma, which is called swadharma. And when we perform that swadharma in a spirit of sacrifice to this all-pervading Lord, there is nothing left. So in order to evolve, in order to unite with God, we have to perform swadharma. So dharma is a complex word, no doubt, but for the time being, calling it religion, philosophy will be correct. So indeed, there were many philosophies that were floating around at that time, as I explained you yesterday. And some of these religions were Nastikya philosophies. And these Nastikya philosophies or Nastikya dharmas were what Krishna calls adharma. They neither followed the Vedas, neither did they accept the presence of God. So they were atheistical, they were salvation centric, and they were also renunciatory. And since they were salvation centric, renunciatory, and also atheistical, Krishna came specifically to re-establish those religions, those philosophies, which were, number one, following the Vedas, acknowledging the presence of God, and then synthesizing them or integrating them in a manner by which everyone could follow them and create a one umbrella. That's why the Bhagavad Gita is spoken of as, if you are looking for one book to follow, then that one book to follow for your religion is the Bhagavad Gita, because it simultaneously does away with Gnostic philosophies. It simultaneously synthesizes and integrates and syncretizes all Ashtikya philosophies. So you can keep your questions for the conclusion of this thing, because if my trend of thought is disturbed in answering questions or whatever points you're putting forward, so you can wait until the whole thing is over, then you'll see that many of your questions are already answered. Now, this Bhagwan is definitely not one of the many devtas that you worship. There are many devtas. And all of these devtas are worshipped by people for the sake of fulfillment of their material desires. So every now and then you have various movies that come out that describe those devtas who will reduce your suffering and help you to get what you want. And if you do the vrats of those various devtas, you are told that your wishes and your desires will be fulfilled. Krishna clearly points out that he is not one of those devtas. Na me vidu sura gana prabhavam na maharishiyah ham adir hi devanam maharishinam cha sarvashah. He says, I am the source and the root, and I precede the creation of all the rishis and all the devtas. And he goes on to say, Kamaisthaistha ritagnyana prapadyante anya devata tam niyamamasthaya prakritya niyate te swaya. The peoples whose hearts are distorted by material desires, they worship various devtas and perform the vrat, the puja, the worship according to those vidhis or those rules and regulations that have been laid down for the worship of the various devtas. And he says, Yo yam tanum bhakta shraddhyarchitam ichyati tasya chalam shraddham tam eva vidhami aham. And he says that I, seated in their heart as a Paramatma, I strengthen their faith in those deities that they worship, filled with material desire. And I fulfill those desires, although their prayers are going to the devtas. In fact, he says, Antavattu phalam tesham tadapya alpamedasam devan deva yajo yanti mad bhakto yanti mamapi. So whatever these people who worship devtas get, it is limited and it is temporary, because it is destined for destined for destruction within this world. And therefore, you should understand that even those things, those perishable things they get from the Devatas, they're actually given by me and me alone. Mayeva vihitan hitan. He says, I am the one who is giving these boons to them. Yepi anya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvitah tepi mameva kaunteya tepi mameva kaunteya avidhi purvakam. So Krishna is saying all those who worship other gods, they are worshipping me alone, but they are worshipping me in the wrong manner. Aham hi sarva yagnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha na tu mam abhijananti tatvena taschavanti te. So he says, I am the ultimate recipient of all sacrifices and worship. And those who do not recognize this, they cannot maintain their spiritual position. So very clearly, Krishna is not a Devata. He is the source of the Devatas. He is the one who empowers the Devatas. This should be very clear. He is also not something that is formless, that has created and become form. Avyaktam, avyaktim. He says that those who imagine that I am the unmanifest who has become manifest. Avyaktim vyaktim apanam manyante mam abuddhaya param bhavam ajananto mam avyayam anutamam. So Krishna says, don't think that I am the formless who has created form. I am the original Lord who is available both in form and in formlessness. And therefore, do not imagine that I am Brahman who has taken form here. I am the source of that Brahman from where all these things have appeared. And Krishna says that fools deride him when he appears in human form and when they do not recognize his supreme nature over all that is. Avajananti mam mudha manushyam tanu mashritam param bhavam ajananto mam bhuta maheshwaram. He says, fools deride me when I come in human form. They do not recognize my supreme nature and my dominion over all that exists. He also says that Moga Asha, Moga Karmano, Moga Jnana Vichetasa, Rakshasim Aswarim Chaiva, Mohinim Shritim Ashritam. So Krishna is explaining that those who do not recognize him as the Supreme Lord, they will never be able to fulfill their aspirations, their hopes, their desires, for being successful in their work, for being successful in their quest for spiritual knowledge, and in whatever other hopes they have. And having taken shelter of Rakshasim Asurim Chaiva means they will take shelter of atheistical philosophies and they will remain ever deluded by Prakriti. So this is what Krishna declares about himself. And Arjun still does not believe that Krishna is God until finally Krishna, to reveal that he is God, gives Arjuna Divya Drishti, or gives him divine vision. And with this divine vision, he reveals to him his cosmic form. And when he reveals to Arjun his cosmic form, this appearance of Krishna in his cosmic form absolutely stuns him. And stunning him and bewildering him, he finally falls at Krishna's feet and he declares, Param Brahma, Param Dhama, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan. Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adi Devam Ajam Vibhum Ahustvam Risha Sarve Deva Rishi Naradas Tatha Asita Devala Vyasa Swayam Chaiva Bravishimi. He says, you are the Supreme Lord, Parabrahman, Paramdham, you are the supreme goal, the supreme abode, the most pure, Pavitram, the divine one. And it's not, and all the sages are saying so. Asita, Devala, Vyasa, all the great spiritual authorities, all the great religious authorities of that time, all of them declare that you are God. And Swayam Chaiva Bravishimi, and you yourself are saying this to me. So, Krishna not only declares that he is God, but he also reveals in his cosmic universal form to declare that he is God, which is the final test of demonstrating that he is the supreme avatar. And he also goes on to have Arjun declare it for him and have it affirmed by all the other religious authorities of that time. In fact, in the battle of Mahabharata, when Bhishma is lying down on his bed of arrows and he is preparing to leave his body, he is asked, who is God? And Bhishma points with a finger and he points at Krishna and he says, Krishna is God. And he recites the Vishnu Sahasranam, declaring Krishna as Vishnu, all 1,000 names of Vishnu. And thus he leaves his body, entering into Krishna's body, because he is a great devotee of Krishna. He is a great bhakt of Krishna, Bhishma. Krishna also says, Yo mam evam asamudo janati purushottamam sa sarva vid bhajate mam sarva bhavena bharata. Krishna says, one who knows me to be the Supreme Lord. You should understand that he is the knower of everything. So, I will pause here. I'd like to take some genuine questions. If anyone has any genuine questions, you're welcome to please go ahead and ask. Yes? If you want to read Bhagavad Gita, there are many versions and aspects of Bhagavad Gita that you can read. One is called Bhagavad Gita Synthesis by M.R. Yardi. This is from the Oriental Institute, the Bhandarkar Oriental Institute in Pune, and it is called the critical edition of the Bhagavad Gita. So you can please read that, because that is the original Bhagavad Gita, which is attested by the Bhandarkar Oriental Institute. There's also another book called the Bhagavad Gita New Translation by George Feuerenstein. So that book will also be fairly accurate as to what is being done. You can also read Bhagavad Gita as it is by Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. This is also a Vaishnava Bhagavad Gita, and it is the standard of Bhagavad Gita over all universities all over the world. Yes, do you have any questions on what I have covered so far? We have good number of participants. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and yes, is there something that you want me to give an example of? Mr. Raman, you'd like to speak?
Yes, Guruji. This is basically I'm trying to understand for every verse. If you can, give a real life situation example, it will be for me. It will be like completely for a layman. If you're considering I'm completely a layman, I'm doing it for the first time. I will relate more with real life examples. That is what my feeling is. In case if you can
Sure. So
help.
if you have any particular verse you want me to explain, please tell me, and then I will go ahead and
Going
give you.
forward, sir, going forward, if you can do that, it will, for me, it will be better understanding. That is what
Sure.
my request is. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Any other questions? So as I pointed out, Krishna speaks as Bhagavan. There's a definition of Bhagavan that is given in the Vishnu Puran by Parashar Muni. He says, Aishwaryasya samagrasya viryasya yashisha shriya jnana vairagyaschaivas sannam bhaga itingana. That what is the quality of Bhagavan? Bhagavan is one who has the 6 opulences in fullest extent. And what are the 6 opulences? What are the 6 wonderful things that God possesses? Aishwaryasya, he is the source of all wealth. Viryasya, he is the bravest. Yashasha, he is the most famous. Shriya, he is the most beautiful. So, all of these, when they are present, that person is called Bhagavan. So, Bhagavan is the speaker of the Bhagavad Gita, which is the song of God. And the Bhagavad Gita carries its authority because it is the scripture that is directly spoken by God. So, are there any questions or queries on this subject? Who is God? Do not confuse Bhagavan with any other Devta. Krishna is Bhagavan. He is the source of all the other Devtas.
Yes, I have a question here, Doctor.
Yes.
So, I think you very beautifully explained about the different aspects of Brahman and then the aspect of Paramatma as well as the aspect of Bhagavan.
Yes.
And so, what was the purpose in a way of, and then of course also you contrasted how Lord Ram was Maryada Purushottam and then Krishna as well was
Krishna is Leela Purushottam.
Leela Purushottam.
He is
And
not Maryada.
sorry,
Yes.
that was Lord Ram who was Maryada Purushottam. And so in this, what is like if you were to understand what is the purpose of the appearance of Lord Krishna in this avatar in the world? Can it be surmised that the purpose was to actually give the message of the Gita in the way things moved in a certain way, or in his own grand design, the way the Mahabharata happened, and then that became the opportunity for Lord Krishna to give the message to people for several generations and perhaps eternity? Or what was the purpose in which we can surmise that Lord Krishna took the avatar and was born?
I think yesterday I discussed in detail and I explained to you that at the time when the Bhagavad Gita appeared or was spoken, there was a lot of confusion in this country. Just like the Silicon Valley is this, the fertile ground for all corporate startups. We also had a wonderful place, and the South Asia was indeed a place which was a fertile field for all startup religions. So it was a Silicon Valley for all startup religions. So there were so many religions that were coming up. Some of these religions which believed in the Vedas were called Ashtikya, and those that did not believe in the Vedas were called Nashtikya. There were those philosophies that were theistical, and then there were those philosophies that were atheistical. Some of these atheistical philosophies, as I discussed with you, were the philosophies of Ajivikas, of the Charvakas, of Shramana philosophies, which later on branched off into Jainism and Buddhism. So these were all the philosophies that preached, the law of karma. And with this law of karma, they terrified many of the Kshatriyas and kings into giving up their duties. Just like Arjuna himself was frightened into giving up the battle, frightened not by the army that was opposing him, but he was frightened by the concept that he would be bearing the sin of his actions. So therefore, Krishna at the end of the Bhagavad Gita says, Sarva dharman parityaja mam ekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshai shami masucha. He says, abandon all other varieties of religion and surrender unto me alone. Abandon all other varieties of religion and surrender unto me alone. So that was one. He came for re-establishing principles of religion because there's a decline in dharma and a rise in adharma. That's number one. Number two, paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam. So from time to time, the earth has to bear the burden of sinful people full of lust, anger, greed, envy, illusion, madness. And they try to torture, trouble, harass saintly people. So Pandavas were the good people. They were his devotees. And they were being troubled and harassed by the Kauravas. So to deliver the earth from the burden of the Kauravas and to rescue the Pandavas, for that reason also he appears. Okay. But more than all of this, you should understand why he appears. He says, Janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvatah tyaktva deham punarjanma naiti mameti so Arjunah. Vita raga bhaya krodha manmaya upashritah bahavo jnana tapasa putamadbhavam agatah. So Krishna says that yes, I come to deliver the saintly people, I come to get rid of all the miscreants, I come to re-establish principles of religion and show them what is dharma and what is adharma. But he says, I also come because to worship me in the form of in the aspect of the formless is very difficult. In the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is asked by Arjuna, my dear Krishna, which is a better way to worship you, to be intimately united with you? Should I worship you in the formless or should I worship you in this form of Krishna? And Krishna answers and he says, Maya Veshya Manoye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Parayopetas Same Yuktatmo Mataha. That one who worships me in this form of Krishna, he is the most intimately united with me. So, between form, worshipping God with form and worshipping God without form, the 12th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is very clear. It states that you should worship God with form in the form of Krishna. He also says that those who are attached to worshipping me in the formless will have a lot of sorrows and difficulties on their path because of their attachment to worshipping me without form. There are some people who say, I can't worship God with form. I can only worship God in the formless. So Krishna says, Kleshodhiktaras tesham avyakta sakta chetasam avyakta hi gatir dukham dehavad viravapyate. Klesha, sorrows, miseries, difficulties, they will come upon those who are attached to worshipping me in the formless. So, Krishna comes to give us a form to worship. Krishna comes to give us a message in his book, the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna comes with activities and pastimes so that we can remain absorbed in his activities and pastimes, and thereby we will become more absorbed in him.
Okay.
So Mr. Raman was asking, I should give some examples. So when Krishna says, Yepi anya devata bhakta yajante shraddhayanvita, tepi mameva kaunteya yajante avidhi purvakam. Aham hi sarva yagnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha natu mam abhijananti tatvena taschavanti. He says that all those who are worshipping, offering respects to the devatas, to the other gods, they do not understand that worship is meant for me, but offered without, in the wrong way, without proper understanding. I am the ultimate recipient of all sacrifice. And those who do not recognize this will fall down from the platform of the truth. So a very good example given in the Bhagavad is the example of Giri Govardhana, which I think everybody knows, that people are not worshipping Indra, who is one of the Devatas, in fact the head of those Devatas. So because they are not worshipping Indra, Indra is very furious. And because Indra is very furious that they are not worshipping him and offering sacrifice to him, he comes and he inundates all of them. He sends such powerful rain, wind, floods that it does everything to destroy them with his rain. But at that time, Krishna, who comes to protect his devotees, he picks up this Govardhan Parvat on the little finger of his hand and he lifts it up to shelter all his devotees from the fury of Indra, trying to illustrate through example that he is the protector of his devotees and they have no obligation to worship any devatas. So there are many examples in the pastimes of Krishna. This is one of them. Does that answer your question? Hello? Who asked this question? Who asked this question to me? Was that Aman who asked the question?
No, sir. No, sir. I didn't ask this question. I think Ameya, someone called Ameya asked this question.
Okay. Yeah. So, anyone else has any other questions?
Here I have one doubt, Guruji. When you
Yes.
say that people are under no obligation to worship devtas, does it mean that Indra is not God?
Indra is certainly not God. He is a Devta.
Okay.
So I think Ameya has asked, when should you start children on studying Bhagavad Gita? You can start as early as you want. If nothing, they can start learning and singing Bhagavad Gita. How does Bhagavad Gita look at tolerance? In fact, Bhagavad Gita is the most tolerant. It says you should worship him in this form, yet he also says that though there are those who worship me without form, but who are engaged in the welfare of everybody, who are doing Loka Sangraha, he speaks and clarifies that he prefers people working in the world to those who have renounced the world. But at this, and he also says you will get sorrow and misery if you renounce the world without having attained union with God. But at the same time, he does not say that it is not a valid path for self-realization. He says, yes, that is also a path. Although working with devotion is far superior. It's not dharma and adharma in sense of right and wrong. See, when adharma is that which paralyzes you from performing activity within the world. So if you're following adharma and you want to give up the world, abandon your family, your wife, your children, your parents, and you want to live as a renunciate, who will look after them? So your dharma is to look after them also, not to abandon them and move around in the world as a renunciate, being selfishly salvation-centric. So from that perspective, he is explaining dharma and adharma. Because what is good for society, what is good for you, what is good for the universe is what Krishna establishes. Mr. Parth, is that clear? Is it okay to start with Lokmanya Tilak Gita Rahasya? Yeah, sure, you can start with any Bhagavad Gita. But in Lokmanya Tilak's Gita Rahasya, which also I have, he specifically emphasizes on performing one's duty in the world and using Karma Yoga as a primary method, in which he is correct because, of course, Lokmanya Tilak recognizes, and so does everyone else, that when Krishna begins to give a path for union with God, he starts by saying, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachan ma karma phala heturbhur mate sangostu akarmani. You have a right to do your duty, you have no right to the fruit. You should not become attached to inaction and you should not consider yourself to be the doer. So your question, Parth, was how do you handle discourse with those who don't agree with us? I think you should not handle discourse with those who don't agree with you. If a person does not agree with you, you are not, in fact, Krishna tells you not to speak to such people. Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 18th chapter towards the conclusion, he clearly points out that idam na tapaskaya na bhaktaya kadachan. There are some people you should not talk to. Either you should leave the room or get them to leave the room. Because one who is envious of God, one who straightaway denies that Krishna is God, one who is not austere, one who is not inclined to listen to God, then you should throw myself off. Do I then not close yourself off to new knowledge? No, of course, you are welcome to pursue all the knowledge that you should have. But if you're looking at spiritual knowledge, then you should take spiritual knowledge from the Shastra. Don't look for a Shastric knowledge. Yah Shastra Vidyam Utsrijaya Vartate Kama Karata Na Sa Siddhim Avapnoti Na Sukham Na Paramgatim. So one who abandons the injunctions of the Shastra and acts according to his own whim and fancy, he does not attain peace, he does not attain perfection, he does not attain the supreme destination. Shruti Smriti Purana Adi Pancharatra Vidim Vina Aikantaki harer bhakti utpata eva kalpate. Even if you think that you're practicing bhakti, but you're doing it without reference to the Shruti, that is the Vedas, Smriti, the other texts, Puranas, then you are merely creating a nuisance in society. So when we talk about new knowledge, you should expose yourself to all new material knowledge that is available. But at all times, whether it's material or spiritual knowledge, you should accept it from authority. And here in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna stresses that the authority is the scripture. Is it clear, Parth? Hello? Any other questions?
I think we're done probably today.
Is it?
Doctor.
Through the time?
It's also time, yes, indeed.
Okay. So today we did the subject, who is God? You're welcome. Perhaps you could send, or HR could arrange to collect any questions which are not answered today so that I can reply to them directly by email, or you could pass the answers on to them. So that's one thing we could do. Tomorrow I will be doing the subject of what is called who am I? So we discussed the subject of who is God. From tomorrow we will discuss the subject who am I?
Okay. Thank you very much, Doctor.
Right. Thank you. Hari Om. Jai Shri Krishna.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.